From the 1950s until present, a Canadian family has owned this very isolated cabin in the middle of the Ontario backcountry. It was the only property on this very small lake. There was two others across the lake, but they were pretty far away. And with the exception of the side of the cabin that was facing the water, the rest of it was surrounded by really dense forest that went on for quite a while. About 2 miles away from this cabin, on the other side of this dirt road, was this huge wildlife reserve that was pretty much just a huge forest that was protected. And anytime the family was visiting this cabin, the kids would at some point go into the reserve and go explore. In 2001, when the family was at the cabin, the kids were across the road over at the reserve, and they decided to walk down this particular trail that they hadn't seen before, and they just started walking. And for about 30 minutes, they're seeing new areas they hadn't seen before, and then they come to this clearing, and there's all these abandoned houses. At first, there was a little debate about whether these were actually abandoned because they did look like they were in pretty good condition. But when they walked a little bit closer, it became very clear that nature is reclaiming this land. Grass is up to your waist. There's vines growing up the side of the houses. There were cars still parked in driveways that were totally rusted out, and, grass is growing all through them. And so they knew these were abandoned. They walked up to the first house they saw, and they looked in, and they couldn't believe what they were looking at. It was like whoever lived here had left without taking anything. The house was still totally furnished. In fact, their dining room tables still had plates and cups and forks and knives, like they had just had dinner and then just got up and left. They start talking about going into these houses and looking around inside, but they started wondering, is this a museum? Is that why everything is in such good repair? Should we not go inside these houses? And they start looking around for any indication that definitely this is not a museum, these are just plain abandoned. And across the street from the house they were at was this totally decrepit looking house. Let's go over there and look in there. And so they look in a window, and very clearly the ceiling is totally sagging down. And the first floor is buckling completely, and there's clothes and shoes scattered everywhere. And so for them, this was confirmation that this is no museum, these are abandoned, we can totally go look around inside. And so for the next couple of hours, the kids explored all the houses that looked structurally sound, that weren't going to collapse on them. And it was just fascinating. There was all this stuff that was left behind that was fairly valuable. And they didn't take anything, they just thought it was very cool. And after a while, they decided they had seen enough, and they turned around and headed back to their cabin. After they got back, they told their parents about what they found, and their father was like, man, that sounds awesome. I want to go check that out. And so that day, they went right back over to the abandoned houses. The first house they showed him was the really decrepit looking one where the ceiling was sagging and there was women's shoes and clothes all over the ground, to show him for sure these are abandoned, because we had some doubts at first too. These are definitely abandoned. So they look at that house, and then they went back to the very first house they saw when they walked into this complex, the one that was in great condition and had the dining table still set. So they go inside and they go upstairs and they find this bedroom that, like everything else in the house, is totally intact. You got pictures on the wall, it's fully furnished. There's even still sheets made on the bed. In the pillow, it's got a head imprint from whoever was there last. And at the foot of the bed is this beautiful fur coat. And the father walks over to it and he looks at it and he's like, this is real fur. This is a really expensive coat. I want to take this for our family. But before he took it, he had a hesitation. Is this really abandoned? If someone had been here, they would have seen footprints all over the house just because there's grime all over the ground. And they can clearly see their footprints from where they've just come in. And he's like, no, this is just a weird situation. It's definitely abandoned, and finders keepers. And so he picks up the jacket and he says, I'm going to give this to mom after I clean it up. And so with the jacket in hand, the father and the kids explore the rest of the house. And when they go outside, they realize it's starting to get late and it's probably time to head back. And so they turn around and they start walking away from these houses towards their cabin. And they get about 50 or 60 meters away when one of the kids said he just had this weird sense that they were being watched. And so he turns around and he's shocked when he sees there is an old woman standing in the bedroom that they had just been in, where the fur coat was. She's got a loose bun on the top of her head. She's got this blue shawl on her shoulders over a cream blouse, and she's glaring at them. When the father saw this woman, he made an audible gasp, and the rest of the group turned around too and saw this woman in the window. And the feeling was guilt. They're like, oh my goodness, we just stole from this poor woman who lives in this abandoned house. And so right away, the whole group starts walking right back towards the house. They're going to give this jacket back. In fact, the dad is like, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have taken this. I'm sorry.